Okay, we are live. Welcome back, everyone, to another town hall. Let me get my screen shared here. All right. Let me shift my view around. I do have the YouTube live chat here in the lower right that we can all see. So if anybody chimes in via the YouTube page, we'll see that there. Okay, so I'm going to handle things a little bit differently today. I hope nobody minds. We're going to skip over all of our usual stuff and we're going to come back to all of that later in the meeting, time permitting. I want to go straight into our discussion topics because, quite frankly, I'd like to get through this and put this first topic behind us. So I'm going to go right. Sorry, do we have Sarah yet? I just noticed that we might be missing Sarah. Has anyone heard from her? Do we know if she's going to be able to join?
I don't, but I'll check for now.
Okay. Oh, there she comes. Never mind, John.
Good.
Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning.
We're just getting started here. And I was just explaining that I'm going to actually skip over all of our usual stuff, the action items and the stuff from the hub. We'll come back to that a little bit later in the meeting. I just want to kind of dive right into our initial topic and kind of get this out of the way. As always, I'd appreciate any help you can give with note taking. Sarah, you have that link, of course, right?
Yes, I do.
Perfect. Thank you. So I'm going to go right into the topic that we need to start with, which is a little bit of unpleasant business. We have to talk about Nate Monroe, one of our volunteers, who's the chapter leader of the Littleton, Colorado chapter. And I'm going to request that you guys give me a little bit of time here to just run through some history and some of the basic facts so that those of you who are not familiar with the situation can get up to speed. Then we're going to have some open discussion so that everyone can share their input, and we'll try to limit that to about 15 minutes just because we could easily take up the whole session with this otherwise. And we will then talk about some proposed next steps, and then we will vote to make sure that everyone is in agreement with that. Does that general approach sound okay to everyone here? Okay, I see a thumbs up and a nod. I'm going to go forward. All right, so just a couple of preliminary facts here for context. John Schull and myself, both co-founders of the e-NABLE community, we have both invested thousands of hours into building and supporting this community and helping improve the lives of as many people as possible. I would hope that that would be clear to most people in the community. We've really given quite a lot of ourselves to this. In addition to all that time and energy, we've both also made quite significant investments of our own money. I can't speak to the specific amounts in John's case, but I can tell you with me that that has been over $200,000 of my own money that I have put into this community, all of which is well documented. Never have we received any kind of benefit from the community in terms of any kind of monetary benefit. We get occasional reimbursement for very specific expenses, which come nowhere near to the amount that we're putting into the community. And those, of course, have all been approved by voting of the community. While John and I are, neither one of us is under any kind of illusion that we are flawless in any way. Of course, we all make mistakes. I can say with confidence that both of us have always acted in whatever way genuinely seems to be in the best interest of the community. And that's always been our guiding principle. And I feel very comfortable saying that about the both of us. I also want to point out that Nate Monroe has received funding in the past for developing his NIOP designs. We put a pretty significant amount of money into that, and he did a lot of work, no doubt. He came up with some very interesting designs, but those designs have been found to be pretty complex and intimidating, and the documentation is pretty hard to follow. We've really done our best to encourage him to make that simpler and easier to follow and get better tutorials out there to make it easier for people to start using these. But despite our best efforts to try to push it in that direction, the NIOP designs really have never seen significant adoption throughout the community. Just as an example, we have issued over 400 badges for our Phoenix designs. We have issued a total of 3 badges for the NIOP designs. Just gives you a sense of that kind of lack of adoption. It's not to say there's anything wrong with the designs. There's a lot of brilliant concepts in there, but in order for it to actually have an impact and get adopted and used frequently in the community, it has to be approachable. It has to be, something that people can feel like they can handle, and it just never got to that point. So now we move into a history of events here that led us to this discussion. On July 20th of last year, Nate put forward another proposal in Lumio asking for another $9,600 in funding to do phase 4 NIOP work. The 1 week discussion period, which we require, and this has been documented in Lumio, that was voted on previously as a requirement, that was skipped. It just went straight to a proposal. So there was a bit of a policy violation right from the start, which we pointed out, but we let it go. When the necessary votes for the approval were not forthcoming, you have to understand every single proposal that has gone out there in Lumio in our history so far, when it's something that, has the clear support of the community, the votes come fast and the necessary voting thresholds get hit very quickly. Usually within a day or two, you have all the necessary votes to pass, and we almost never have anybody voting against. It's just, if a proposal makes sense, there's usually broad support for it and not a lot of contention for almost all of the proposals we've seen. In this case, that was not the case. There were several people that were abstaining with concerns and doubts. There were several people that voted against it. And so there was this mixture and a lot of dialogue happening back and forth with people trying to explain what their concerns were. On August 13th, John and I, both Lumio admins, that's kind of our job to try to manage that platform. We determined that there was not sufficient support from the community to approve the funding. And we did encourage Nate to use the community's comments and concerns to craft a better proposal. We just, there were a lot of factors at play here, and this was certainly one of those proposals that went into a lot of gray areas. But at the end of the day, it becomes a question of looking over everything that's been said and all the comments and looking at all the activity. Does it seem like we have the support of the community? Does the community seem to be in favor of this overall? And it really seemed clear that there was not a broad, level of support, and there were enough concerns to say we really can't be funding this yet. And so we brought that proposal to a close and noted that in Lumio. On August 19th, Nate drafts a letter of concern, which is linked here. Now that he has made this letter public, he posted it in one of his own blog articles. I'm able to share it. We did not share it previously because it was addressed only to John and I, and we felt that that might be a violation of trust and privacy, and so we kept it to ourselves. You're welcome to read it. The link is there. It is filled with all kinds of accusations and misrepresentations, personal attacks against John and myself. And it also included a demand for over $36,000. He said, "I request this matter be settled out of court to my full satisfaction as to not further trigger my PTSD, including the original award of $9,600, an additional $25,000 to settle the discrimination issues, and $2,000 for relocation expenses for a total of $36,600. That was just one interesting part of a very, very long letter. Another lengthy email was sent by Nate on August 23rd. To me and John and others, again, filled with very hateful accusations, slanderous personal attacks, and misrepresentations. And John responded to each and every one of these emails with kindness, patience, compassion, and really a genuine concern for Nate's well-being. I quite honestly, I was pretty blown away by the way John handled things. I thought it was quite graceful considering how he had been attacked. On August 27th, John Schull warned Nate by email about his violation of our code of conduct. This was last year, August. I do want to remind you that we have a well-documented code of conduct. It has served us well in the past, and your recent communications were out of line. So we very clearly warned him about that. Yet on March 21st, just days ago, Nate wrote several posts in the e-NABLE Hub, including the one that I linked here. It's a very long post, again, filled with wild accusations of discrimination and fraud, and he adds in warnings that John and I are facing up to 60 years of imprisonment in a federal prison, and just all kinds of horrible things were said in here. He linked to a blog post in there, several blog posts, but this one in particular, Adventures in Homelessness, courtesy of e-NABLE. He talks not only about me and John, who he accuses of being covert, malignant narcissists. It's an interesting term I've never heard. But he goes on to attack the e-NABLE community as a whole, saying if other members of e-NABLE accept the leadership treating people with disabilities this way, it implies the group is predatory by exploiting people with disabilities, not just for marketing purposes, but to exploit their design skills like they had done to me for years with the NIOP platform. So he's now gone on to attacking the entire community. And that's all I can share with the history here, folks. It was another clear violation of the code of conduct. The very first principle of our code of conduct is we treat each other with respect at all times. There's a lot more in there, but quite honestly, you don't have to go further than that first bullet because that kind of says it all. And so at this point, I'd like to open things up to discussion. Let's try to keep this limited to 15 minutes, but I'd like to hear what others have to think about this.
I got a quick one for you.
Please.
I'm kind of surprised that you. I mean, I think I've seen it. I forget what the other guy's name was, but you like paying volunteers in the group to do work. I was a little surprised at that altogether. And I think if we ever do if we ever have some work that we need to get done, it should be done through a third party, maybe.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting point, Ward. I think that goes into a different topic. Maybe we discuss another time. I would say that whether we're paying a third party or paying one of our volunteers, we're it's coming out of the e-NABLE fund either way. We
Sure.
have talked in the past about the fact that we always want to have volunteers do as much as we can. We are a volunteer community, but there are certain roles, like the valuable role that Sarah plays and Ben Rubin before her, that it's just not realistic to expect a volunteer to do. It takes too much of a time commitment. There are hours of work every week that they have to do, and they have to keep food on the table. And there are
Yep.
certain roles that we felt it warrants, treating that as a paid role. But those payments have always been approved through voting by the community before that happens. And each time it gets renewed, that's approved by the community.
Yeah.
So I think you make a good point, Ward.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we should discuss that. Maybe that could be a separate discussion as a broader topic about just how we pay for things. And we can
Yeah.
certainly put that on the agenda. Yeah.
It was just I was just surprised, and I think it kind of leads to stuff like this happening.
Sure.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying maybe we should, like you said, later on we should maybe discuss not doing it anymore. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is.
Well, if you think we should discuss it, then I agree. We should discuss it. It's been sort of the backbone of our MO is to encourage members of the community who are typically volunteers to write proposals. This, I think, is the only time we've run into a problem after all these years. But let's do talk. And it's always a good idea to review, and maybe we'll end up making some changes.
So I did put that on the agenda, and we
Yeah.
will talk about that. Maybe not today, but we will talk about that. Thank you, Ward.
All right, that's all I got.
Well, I'll weigh in. First of all, I don't want anyone to have the impression that I've put in even a fraction of the amount of money Jeremy has revealed he's invested in this. I believe he's talking about his substantial investment of time and money in e-NABLE Web Central. It's just a huge thing. It's true the two of us have put in lots and lots of time, and I think we're both proud of our effort to have done the right thing and to not have gotten entangled in conflicts of interest, which is particularly challenging because Jeremy has a successful business along these lines.
Right.
So I just wanted to say I want to salute Jeremy, and for that matter, I will take this moment to salute Nate. Nate's going through a hard time. I frankly don't read these scurrilous letters as closely as Jeremy does, which is why I can sort of remain sort of sympathetic to his difficult personal circumstances. But
Yeah.
it's just gone off the rails, and so I think we should proceed. I think Jeremy's summary of the history is accurate and helpful. I've got nothing to add to that.
I'd like to hear from everyone. We don't have that many of us here today. Rick, would you like to share any thoughts?
I just feel that as a volunteer, I mean, as a volunteer, I've never had expectations of e-NABLE paying me. I mean, I signed up as a volunteer. That was my understanding, and I can't even fathom at this point going back and saying I expect now e-NABLE to, to pay my bills.
Right.
And I'm not trying to be mean or mean-spirited in any way. I guess my expectation of what I do, which has always been that of a volunteer. And to me, volunteer means volunteer. We've all put in designs, and some of them fly and some of them don't. But the popularity at my stay at e-NABLE has never these devices are open source. They're designed to help people. They're designed to get these devices into the hands of people who could otherwise not be able to afford them. I never expected anybody to make a demand like this. It's kind of, I guess I'm taken back a little.
And that actually is very insightful, Rick, and I feel very much the same way. And it ties a lot back to, I think, Ward's point. And I'm feeling a lot more interested in having that discussion now. Not today again, but maybe it's worth having that discussion of, we have the e-NABLE Fund. The e-NABLE Fund is there to support folks in our community, but maybe it shouldn't be a matter of paying for people's time. Maybe it shouldn't be tied to work. Maybe it should be more focused on covering out-of-pocket expenses. If somebody wants to take a trip to go and give a presentation to spread the word about e-NABLE, yes, let's pay for the airfare, let's pay for the hotel, let's pay for the rental car, but maybe we shouldn't be paying for people's time to do work. That's something that I look forward to discussing.
I mean, a lot of us have limited time, and we do the best we can. But
Absolutely.
in my mind, I've gotten into trouble where I ran out of time. I needed help. I put my hand up, and somebody has always stepped up to help me.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way I viewed it. However, when I commit to say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do everything I can to do that. I'm not expecting a parade or I guess I'm disappointed.
Thanks for sharing, Rick. Adam, can I get your thoughts?
Sure. I guess I'm going to couch this by saying I don't think I necessarily have a horse in this race. That said, I, the initial request, I think, flew in the face of the spirit of the e-NABLE Fund. I don't think that we are set up, and I don't think anybody in the community prior to this had perceived it to be a purse to act as a source of capital for some kind of personal venture, which is what my read of the initial request was was for funding to develop a for-profit company, I believe, for developing designs and then selling them. So that's thing number one, and why I was opposed to it initially. Thing number two, I think that this is an individual who's going through his own stuff. I wouldn't, honestly, I've seen this kind of thing in my personal family before, and I don't think that it really warrants too much dissection of the words that were written or the attacks that were levied. My impression is that e-NABLE is not a legal entity, and so as far as who who would be at fault or who would be the subject of a suit, again, I'm not a legal expert here, but I really think that that's a non-issue. I think the community spoke and said this is not something that we want to fund, and everything else is sort of a distraction and a smokescreen. I think that moving forward, steps were taken pretty immediately to make the voting process clearer, to better define, how these kinds of things can be handled in the future, to better define, what percentage of the vote needs to be yay and how abstaining counts toward that total. So I think in terms of safeguarding for the future, we've already taken steps to make sure this doesn't happen again. I also think that we've done a better job to define what the fund is, and I think there's still, to Ward's point, more work to be done to more holistically explore why and how we have the e-NABLE Fund and what its intended purpose is. So all of that said, I don't think necessarily that further steps need to be taken right now. I know what the vote's going to be coming up, or at least I suspect what it's going to be. I might abstain from that, but I'll leave it there.
Excellent. Thank you, Adam. Sarah, can I ask for your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with what's been said. Looking at the posts, it's very clear that you know, this person is going through some great difficulties, and it's out of respect for him and his privacy. I don't think this is the space to analyze that, but I think this is a really good discussion of what the e-NABLE fund is for and what the volunteer network is about, and the work that's being done here. And I I think it's good to always good to continue that and to clarify things, but I think that things right now are clear. So yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. I did note some proposed actions, which we'll discuss and then vote on. Before I do that, I want to ask if anyone else has anything, and I see that Jen Owen has just joined us. I'm sorry, Jen, we've already covered the full history of this and already had our open discussion. I think you're kind of aware of what's going on, Jen, and so I would ask for just your thoughts in general. I apologize that you didn't have the benefit of kind of the whole history that we went through here, of the full chain of events that led up to this, but any thoughts you'd like to share, we'd love to hear from you.
I read through it this morning. It's very sad. I feel very sad that you and John have been accused of this kind of stuff. I know you both personally for the last 10 years, and I know that is very much not you. I've had a lot of struggle over the years with people who have been paid for things that I've always felt should have been volunteer work. I myself got paid for blogging and doing a lot of things in the beginning, in the first, I think, 5 years of e-NABLE. But for the first 3 or 4 years of e-NABLE, I was working 60 to 90 hours a week, full-time on e-NABLE work, unpaid, just to focus on getting the word out there and to get as many hands on people as possible. And I spent a lot of years working with news media, planning our big John Hopkins event. All of that was unpaid as far as monetary gain, but my heart was filled up. So the profits for me was being able to help people and get more people excited about e-NABLE and things like that. And we have so many volunteers who have spent countless hours. They've spent years, literally years, working on designs for free out of the kindness of their heart. And I've never seen any one of them asking for reimbursement for that, specifically to keep them in their houses or make sure they weren't homeless or things like that. And that really, I don't know, this whole situation really sits heavy on my heart, not just for Nate. I feel a lot of pain for him. I feel like, there's a lot of stuff that's got to be going on in his life. And I've been working on healing my own past stuff. And I have learned a very important phrase from somebody very near and dear to me, that hurt people hurt people. Something is very, very painful, obviously, I'm making up in my mind that something is very painful going on in Nate's life, and it's sometimes easier to deal with that pain by lashing out at other people. And usually it's the kind-hearted people that get lashed out at the most. And you and John have put your whole lives and hearts into this e-NABLE project from the very beginning. And I can't imagine that either of you would ever deliberately harm somebody in any way, not just monetarily, not just specific, trying to get them homeless or retaliating against anything like that. So this whole situation just really sits heavy on me, and I hope that all of us can work together to heal it. I want to see everybody feel good and happy and move on, but there's obviously got to be some things taken care of, and hopefully it all works out.
Thank you for sharing that, Jen. John, you had your hand up before. Would you like to share something else?
I did have my
We're
hand
not
up.
hearing- there we go.
But I don't think I have anything to add at this point. Thank
Okay.
you.
Well, we'll move on then. I did outline some proposed actions. I am not sure that these are the correct proposed actions, and that's why I'd like to get input. Excuse me. And maybe we can have a little bit more open discussion after we go through these before we take a vote here. As always, this is just about what's best for the community. This has nothing to do with me and John and Nate or anything like that. The fact is that Nate has now violated the e-NABLE Code of Conduct a second time after being warned about that in writing. So I am proposing that Nate be banned from the participation in the e-NABLE Hub. I think the kind of posts that he's put there are damaging to the community and hurt what we're all trying to build here. I propose that he be banned also from the Lumio voting platform. I don't think he can effectively participate there, and I don't think that there's any justification in allocating any more money towards somebody that's taking these positions, especially attacking the community itself. And I would further propose that the chapter that he leads in Littleton, Colorado be delisted and removed from our chapter map, because it's clear that as a chapter leader, he is not able to represent the best interests of our community. I would go on to say that if somebody were to take over that chapter other than Nate, and we were not engaging with him, but somebody that does have the interests of e-NABLE, I would be more than happy to have that chapter brought back into the fold and back on the map. I have no issue with anybody else in that chapter or on that team, nor do I have any issue with Nate, quite frankly. It's just, again, I don't feel it's in the best interests of representing our community at this time. And so those were my thoughts about proposed actions. But before we get into a voting, I'd like to hear from anyone else here again about maybe we should be thinking about different actions. Please tell me what you think.
Now, I want to say that I think that's a helpful list. I would support all three of those items. I will point out that Nate at his best is dynamite. And I don't mean that in the destructive sense. I mean, he's just a terrific, enthusiastic, extraordinarily talented and energetic guy. He's not at his best right now, and I wouldn't rule out the notion that he comes back to us in a more stable state, which he can come back to us through civil communications. I would welcome the opportunity to be reunited with the old Nate, but the current Nate, I think, would just be toxic if we allowed him to continue doing what he's doing.
You make a very good point, John. And as I read that very word made me uncomfortable. I'm going to take it out. I don't like the word permanently. I don't believe in trying to predict what the future holds. So yes, I don't believe we should be talking about anything permanent. I think for now, that's what needs to happen. Any other thoughts?
I remember, I'm sure you guys remember, you and Jeremy and John remember when e-NABLE first started, and we had to ban Richard Van Ness.
That's right.
And he was one of my ex-husband Ivan and Richard were the original designers of the RoboHand, and Richard had his own ideas of how things were to be made and was not open to any kind of modifications to the design that he had made. And he was trying to make money off of the design, and Ivan and I didn't want anything to do with that. And so when he found the e-NABLE Google Plus group, he came in blasting and putting down all of the different designers, Peter and Frankie and Andreas and Ivan, and just was causing a lot of division in the community, and waving around a lot of accusations that were unfounded and were untrue. And so we had to ban him from the original Google Plus group. And once that happened, we were able to, the designers didn't feel so constrained, and there was less stress. And so then the designs just blossomed and they exploded and they went everywhere.
I remember that.
And, a few years later, I actually reached out to Richard through email and, tried to make nice, and it was still very angry, and so we just had to let it go. And we always had the thought that if Richard could come back and help instead of harm, we would have welcomed him, because obviously him and Ivan had worked together for a year to come up with this design for the first finger. And he obviously knew design, and he obviously was very passionate about it at the beginning. And still, I think he's still working on things. But when you have somebody who's jaded or hurt in some way, coming in and sprinkling their hurt around a bigger community, sometimes it's best to have them take a break and work on themselves and work through the problem privately. I don't think a forum is a place to have these conversations between personal things that are so emotionally driven. It's not where, I think if Nate and you guys can have some private conversations, and Nate can work through his stuff and come back to his old Nate, the way that he interacted in the beginning, and his passion for this project, and the amount of love he put into all of the designs that he created. I think that's the Nate we need back. And I think, when you're faced with homelessness and you've got all these things going on in your life, that's all you can see. And there's this panic and this paranoia that happens. And all you can do is feel like you're fighting your way out, and you're going to fight and you're going to fight and you're going to try to get relief however you can. And I feel like that's where Nate might be right now. And maybe when he gets to a stable location and he's been able to work on some of his PTSD and get some help.
I want to jump in real quick and caution against any labeling. On what he might be going through.
Yeah.
Sorry,
true.
Jen.
That's okay. Yeah.
For the record, I will point out that Nate used that term himself in his writing, but I agree.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm just going off of what I read from what Nate shared, and those are things that he shared. But I really do feel like he's got so much so many wonderful ideas and so much passion that it would be a shame to not have him back once we get through this hard stuff.
Agree. And I feel the same way, and I'll come to you in just a moment, John, that I would welcome Nate back with open arms. I have no hard feelings. I would love to have his involvement in the community if he is able to find a way of looking at things differently and move past this. I have absolutely no problem, reversing anything that we decide here and welcoming him entirely back. I could not agree more. John, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say that, it's not our job to analyze where Nate's coming from. It's not our job to make prescriptions for Nate. But I will say that in my communications with him, my private communications with him, I've expressed my concern, and I've told him that I'd be quite happy to talk to him about any ways in which I could help. But I denied that it was e-NABLE's responsibility, but that I personally care about him, and am open to those conversations. He hasn't taken me up on that. But I want to be clear that it's not our job to do any of those things. It is our job to act as stewards of the community and to protect the really interesting community that we have going on. And so this isn't about therapy. It's not about retribution, but I do think we ought to disconnect Nate from being able to piss in the pool while he's so inclined, because it's not good for the pool.
And because we have so much important work to do and some really wonderful things that we're doing, I would like to move past this. So I am going to ask that we move into taking a vote here. What we are voting on is to, at least for now, remove Nate from the hub and to remove him from the Lumio platform and to delist the Littleton, Colorado chapter.
May I suggest that those are 3 separate votes?
Absolutely. That's a great point, Adam. Thank you. We'll split those into 3 separate votes. Okay, so let's do this. Removal from the e-NABLE hub will be the first vote. Removal from the Lumio voting platform will be the second vote. And delisting of the Littleton, Colorado chapter would be a third vote. Let's go ahead and take a vote on the first one, removal from the e-NABLE hub. I'd ask for a show of hands for those in approval. I see 1, 2, 3, 4. Are you able, maybe you want to share by text or voice, Sarah, if you can't come on camera? Okay, I see 5, Ward and Adam. I see a thumbs up from Ward. Adam, how do you vote?
Nay. I vote
Adam?
nay with the caveat that I think that should be the exclusive purview of MASV.
And why do you say that?
As the hub moderator.
So I'll only respectfully disagree with that, only because you might not be aware of the history. I know that MASV put himself forward as the hub admin. He is a hub admin. I'm not sure if
Gotcha.
you're aware that I am actually the one that built the hub from the ground up. I put everything into the hub.
Then
MASV has
then
been a
whoever the moderator is.
Yes.
I don't think that necessarily is a community decision. I think that's a moderator decision as a communication platform.
Interesting. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and say, I'm just going to record votes here. I'm going to vote yes. John votes yes. Jen votes yes. Rick votes yes. Sarah votes yes. And Adam votes no. This should be the decision of hub moderators. Okay. And Ward, I'm sorry, I didn't put you in there. Ward voted yes. Okay, well, I'm not quite sure how to handle this, given that it's not unanimous. Clearly, it's a overall approval. I agree with Adam's comment. Since we have 2 hub admins, actually 3, Rick is also an admin. Rick, John, and myself are all hub moderators and admins. I would argue that we have, half of the people that voted yes are hub admins.
Of course. So, of course I defer.
I'm going to say that this one has passed, and we will be removing Nate from the hub, at least for now. Second vote is to remove Nate from the Lumio voting platform. I'm going to vote yes. Anyone else? I see a yes from John. I see a yes from Sarah. I see a check from Ward. I just want to confirm that that is a yes.
Yeah, I think it's a yes.
you.
Let me double check that.
Rick,
Yeah, it is.
Would it be possible for us just to add the word before removal? Can we just put temporarily? I think that makes it a lot easier to, because I don't see this as a permanent thing.
I agree.
I
agree.
personally like Nate. I like working with Nate. But as a moderator, I would never blast the community this way. This is something you take up one-on-one. That's the right thing to do. And
I think you're
I
right.
think a temporary removal of all three of these things speaks better to, I would personally welcome working with Nate again, but I think it diminishes my work when any member goes against the community or uses the community. I just think I would feel better about my vote if
No,
it's
I agree. And
temporary.
I think that was the intent here. That's why I took out the word permanently, but you're right. Let's explicitly add in the word temporary to make that clear. And just because we already voted, let me just ask, does anybody have any problem with that change of wording from the first vote? Does that change anyone's vote
I think
here?
the word,
No.
I think can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I think the word suspend might capture the intent well. Temporarily might seem to bind us to undoing it. Suspend allows for the possibility that it would be restored, but doesn't imply
Agreed.
a commitment to reverse
again,
that.
I don't think anything has changed with our intended meaning here, but I think we've clarified the wording to come more in line with our intended meaning. So let me just ask again, does anybody feel differently given that change of wording?
No.
No.
Then I'm going to leave that as is, and let's make the same change here. Temporary suspension from the Lumio
My
voting
suggestion
platform.
is remove temporary.
Because I think that opens the door to getting this resolved to where we can all work together again.
Wait, two people were talking there, so I need to ask both of you to repeat that. Rick, why don't you go first?
It just makes me feel better to word it in a way that looks like we could repair this. But, we have to, I believe for everybody's well-being, we have to temporarily suspend because I don't think that it's in Nate's best interest for this to be, hurting the community. I feel it diminishes my work when the community's suffering. Makes it harder for me to work with people that are frightened or upset or afraid to speak out. And I think the word temporary suspension it removes the permanence. I don't really believe it's a permanent thing. I think when everyone cools off a little.
I feel 100% the same. But John, I think you were saying something also. What was that?
Well, that's right. We've all agreed that we don't want to imply permanence. I'm questioning whether we want to allow someone to think that we're committing to temporary. I just think the word suspend captures what we're doing, not temporarily suspend, because that might be thought to commit us to a reversal. Suspend just means that for the moment, it's not done, and what happens in the future remains to be seen. And
I see your point, John. I see your point.
Okay.
So I guess I need to ask for others, input on this. I don't feel strongly one way or the other, but I do understand where John's coming from. We could say suspension from the Lumio voting platform. That does not mean that that's a permanent act. But I can see where John's coming from. If we say temporary suspension, it kind of has the sound of we're only doing this for a little bit of time and then we're going to unsuspend, which it's going to depend on him.
I think our attention is well documented in this call, and we're not a legal entity again, making a legal determination. I'm fine either way. It doesn't make much of a difference to me.
I'm going to go ahead and change this to suspension from the Lumio voting platform with the understanding that there's nothing permanent intended by this. And with that in mind, and Adam, you have your hand up. Was there something else you wanted to say?
That was from the original vote for the second item.
Got it. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and vote on the second item now, suspension from the Lumio voting platform, at least for now. I vote yes. Adam, I'm going to put you down for a yes. Let me get everyone else's votes, please. I see a thumbs up from John. Rick is voting yes. Jen, how do you vote?
For the Lumio platform, does that mean like he wouldn't be able to vote and he wouldn't be able to propose anything?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. Yes.
Sarah, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Ward, I see a hand. Does that mean yes?
Yep.
Thank you.
I'm going to follow Adam's lead.
Very good. So that one is unanimously passed, and we'll
That
move
is a
on.
bad call, Ward, just as a matter of.
And I'm changing the
Thanks
wording
for
on
the
the
warning.
last. I'm changing the wording on the last one as well to suspension of the Littleton, Colorado chapter. That same principle applies. We would remove it from the map for now and delist it. By no means does that mean that that chapter cannot return in good standing in the very near future if something changes, either with the leadership or with Nate or anything that would make us feel like that chapter is able to represent the best interests of the community. With that sort of intended meaning in mind, let's vote on this one. I'll go ahead
I think
and vote.
just a note. I think that should get a separate letter, directed to the chapter instead of to.
That's a good point, Ward. Thank you.
Agreed.
Can you tell me how many volunteers are in that chapter?
Well, it's hard to say because when Nate put up this Lumio voting proposal, all of a sudden there were like 10 new members of the chapter that he wanted to bring in to vote. I don't know if those are, active members or if they were just, I don't know the full context of that. Rick, as the chapter administrator, do you have any insight into the documented number of active people in that chapter?
They did not respond to my request for a census.
Okay, so we don't know, Jen.
Okay,
I don't
so
know.
we don't know if
We did request it. We requested a census, but I did not hear back.
I did say that before you joined, I think, Jen, that this action would in no way be intended to reflect in any way on other members of that chapter. Any other members of that chapter are still considered volunteers in good standing as long as they're able to contribute in, positive ways. We are not taking any action against those individuals in the chapter. It's only that because Nate himself is the leader of the chapter, we don't feel that that chapter best represents e-NABLE at this point, given the views that he's
Right.
publicly expressing about the community. That's all.
Okay.
So with that in mind, I vote yes. Ward, is that a yes vote on this particular question?
Yep.
Okay. John?
Yes.
Adam?
No.
Rick?
To use John's metaphor, there's always going to be a little pee in the pool.
Yes. Rick?
Vote yes.
Let me see. Sarah?
Is there a way to see if others can step in before delisting chapter?
Step in how? What do you have in mind?
To lead the chapter. And
Oh, I see. So offer an opportunity for the chapter to change leadership, in which case we would not take this action. I think that's a really good idea. What do others think about that? We can go back and kind of change.
I like that idea too. I would like to, I don't know anything about the Littleton chapter and, how they run their stuff or
They
where.
probably have a Facebook page. So they probably have a Facebook page. I think it's a great idea, Sarah. I think we should write to anyone we can think of writing, report on what we just determined, and say that we would look forward to new leadership stepping up in order to preserve the Littleton chapter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let me just make sure I've, sorry, go ahead, Jen.
I'm just curious, if there's no way to find out who is in the chapter, I guess, if there's no way to find out who's in the chapter, how do you reach out to them to ask
Well, I mean,
If they have a Facebook page, we can message them, and
Okay.
we can certainly write to Nate. And there may be some people, I think there are some people who registered on Lumio and said they were members of the Lumio chapter. So we have a number of people we can
that's right.
reach out to.
Yeah.
So, so let
I
me
would
make
say
sure
better.
let me just make sure I've captured this the way that you guys had in mind, because it sounds like a really good approach to me. We would request that the Littleton, Colorado chapter choose a new chapter leader. If this happens, no further action would be needed with regards to the chapter. If they're not willing to do this, then we would suspend the Littleton, Colorado chapter with a letter to that chapter. Did I capture that correctly before we take a vote?
Well, I guess I would, when a new chapter and a new leader pops up, there's a certain amount of handshaking that goes on before we declare it an active chapter. Under these conditions, I guess I would like someone to feel confident that the person whose name pops up is a real person who can carry on a professional relationship.
So should we say that
So-
if they are open to picking a new leader, that we would ask them to kind of go through the chapter approval process once again so that we can capture that information and get more familiar with them? Would that be appropriate?
Would it be, sorry.
Go ahead, Jen.
Would it be possible to maybe reach out to the chapter and then invite the chapter members to a Zoom call so that you can see faces and know they're real people? Instead of a text or messages or emails. That way you can have like a group discussion, and you can have a way to communicate with them, and maybe they have their own concerns, or maybe they have some information that might help you guys resolve your problems too.
Well, how about this? I'm a little hesitant to jump into a Zoom call, given how unpredictable things are. What if we write them and say, we are uncomfortable about the current status. We are unclear about the current status of the Littleton chapter, given that their identified leader has just been disconnected, if only temporarily. And I'm willing to have this conversation. I imagine others of us are as well. We would be happy to discuss new leadership.
John brings up a good point, because
maintain
just taking this from I don't want to say a kind of a legal point of view, but at least from a procedural point of view, we do have a documented policy that in order to be recognized as a valid chapter, one of the requirements is membership on the hub. And so just by nature of the fact that Nate will not be a member of the hub, technically that goes against the qualification rules for that chapter. So I like that approach of simply reaching out to them and asking if that's something that we can resolve and get a different, leader in place, and, discuss whether they feel that they are able to represent the interests of the community.
and that certainly allows for the possibility that we decide to arrange for a Zoom call. It also allows for the possibility that we say, this just doesn't make sense here, or a phone call or anything else. I'm open. I think some members of this group ought to indicate their willingness to discuss how to go forward.
And I am certainly willing, and I would welcome that discussion with anyone who is interested. I don't think I can adequately capture all of the nuances of what we've just discussed here in the actual wording of the vote, but because this is recorded, I think we're okay. We all understand what we're meaning here.
Right.
And so let's take a vote on this, that we will reach out to those in the chapter and request that they consider new leadership, and make sure that they are still aligned with the e-NABLE community and wish to support our work. And if that is the case and they are willing to go that way, no further action is needed. They remain in good standing. If they are opposed to that or unwilling to have that discussion or change leadership, we would suspend that chapter until something changes. And so I'd like to open that up for a vote. I will go ahead and put myself down for a yes. Jen, how do you vote?
Yes.
Rick?
And I'm sorry, what's the Z stand for?
I'm afraid I'll abstain on this one.
Adam,
Abstain.
Sarah,
Yes.
Ward,
I'll agree. Yes.
and wait, did I miss one?
John.
Oh,
You
John.
missed me.
John.
I will vote yes, but I think that you and I and anyone else who wants to raise their hand should review that letter to make sure that it sort of captures the right.
Absolutely. I kind of figured that went without saying, but yes, we would draft this in a Google Doc and it would be circulated to this group here. Everyone that's been involved in this decision, everyone will have input. And only once we are all comfortable with the wording of that, would that be sent out.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody care to change their votes based on those last comments there? Are we all good here? Okay. Well, that vote also passes with five votes yes and 2 abstain. So all 3 of these measures will be pursued. And I really appreciate everyone's input on a very difficult and sad situation. I do want to say just once again that I hold absolutely no hard feelings with regards to Nate. I really respect him a lot in the work he's done and appreciate it so tremendously. And I do hope that we can find our way back to positive ground. I really do.
Mhm.
Okay, well, we have used up our time for the day, folks. I'm sorry. I was hoping to kind of get through that more quickly, but it was obviously important. I do want to just, there was a lot of activity on the hub this week, so I'm going to save these and we'll go through these next time. Thank you for putting all these in here, Sarah. We will not miss these posts. We will look and talk about them next time, but we'll put that off for 1 week. Rick put the metrics in here, but I don't think there's a whole lot of significance that we needed to talk about. They're in there. We still have pretty much the same things going on. And I think we're going to have to wait to get into the rest of our topics next time. Let me just ask if anybody has anything short that
I
yes.
do. So starting in 1 minute, there will be a special bionic design meeting. It will not be recorded. It is about integration, like
wow.
the article that Adam recently shared. So
What?
Yes, so I hope that some of you can make it because this one won't
I
be
can make the
recorded.
first half. That's is there a link on the hub?
Yeah, and I can put it in the chat too, really quickly.
Yeah, that was my capstone research in grad school. That's awesome.
Oh, wow.
Cool.
Do you know, Sarah, was that Zoom session set up under the info account or under mine? Probably the info account, right?
I am not sure.
Okay. I don't think we'll have any conflict. I'll let you know if we run into problems, but
But the Zoom meeting link is now in the chat, so I'm gonna leave this meeting and start that one, and I hope
sounds
to
good.
see some of you there.
And I'll go ahead and close this meeting just to make sure that Sarah doesn't have any problems with that. Thank you all for participating. I look forward to seeing you all next week.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for pulling all the information together, Jeremy. Jen, nice to see you. You look great.
Thank you. Sunshine does me well.
All right. Bye all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.